Advisory. Some episodes of the 1836 podcast are not intended for all audiences, due to details that might be considered disturbing. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. On the next episode of the 1836 podcast, we continue the story of the bandit queen Belle Starr. Her run-ins with the hanging judge Issac Parker and U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves, and her mysterious, unsolved murder. Sam and Belle Starr established a household in the wooded southwest corner of the Cherokee Nation. In their first year of marriage, Belle helped her husband in building a cabin and planting approximately 3 acres of crops. However, it did not take long for outlaws to discover Belle and Sam's cabin, and they began to use it as a hideout. These outlaws knew that the U.S. government hesitated to confront Tom Starr's family due to their Cherokee status, and as such, they often took refuge in their remote and hidden lands. Allegedly, Belle would prepare a nearby cave for the outlaws due to the limited space in their cabin for both the outlaws and their horses. Gradually, over the next year, Belle seemed to accept a life supported by crime. Belle's first documented criminal act occurred in April 1882 when she and Sam stole 2 horses, one of which belonged to a man named Andrew Crane, valued at $85, a substantial sum at the time. The other horse, a valuable pregnant mare, belonged to another man. The horse owners naturally wanted their animals back and confronted Belle. At that point, unaware of the theft, Crane inquired with Belle, who falsely claimed that she had seen a black man riding his horse and both animals were presently at a ranch belonging to John West. Belle proposed that if Crane gave her $40, she would use the money to pay off West and recover the horses. Crane staunchly refused, making it clear that he would report the thieves to the authorities. In response, Belle issued a veiled threat, suggesting that her husband might cross paths with Crane on a trail, insinuating possible harm. Despite Crane's firm stance, he later visited John West's ranch to investigate the situation further. West, aware that Belle and Sam Starr had attempted to involve him in their scheme, firmly declined to participate. It seemed that Crane and West had reached an understanding, but for reasons unknown, Crane departed without reclaiming the stolen horses. A day or two later, Sam and Belle Starr visited John West's ranch. West informed them that they had to remove the stolen horses from his property and return them to their rightful owners. At the same time, Crane's father visited Sam's father, Tom Starr, and appealed to the family to return his son's stolen horse, hoping that a respected elder could persuade his son and daughter-in-law to do the right thing. However, this plea failed, as Tom Starr oversaw a network of illegal operations and was unwilling to get involved and relinquish the stolen horses. By now, the entire community was well aware that the Starrs were linked to the theft of 2 horses. With no other recourse, Crane resorted to involving the law. Marshal I.W. Marks and his posse embarked on the pursuit of the horse thieves. They eventually tracked down Belle and Sam near the border of the Osage Nation. The husband and wife outlaws had set up camp by a creek, and the marshals, pretending to be campers, cleverly apprehended Sam, disarmed him, and chained him to a tree, making it appear as though he were simply standing there. They then sent a young boy to fetch Belle, successfully luring her into their trap. As Belle walked past them on the path leading to the creek, the marshals pounced on her. 2 of them grabbed her by the arms, while the rest encircled her. A search revealed that she was armed, with a 6-shooter concealed under her overskirt and 2 Derringer short pistols hidden beneath her arms. Belle fiercely resisted and threatened to kill the officers, making her one of the most challenging prisoners the marshals had ever encountered. Traveling in those days, especially in Indian Territory, was slow and arduous. Lawmen had to undertake lengthy journeys, often lasting a month or more, using wagon outfits and camping equipment, all while collecting offenders and witnesses along the way. Belle Starr, as a female prisoner, irritated her captors to no end. She frequently dropped items like knives, forks, blankets, or anything she could reach from the wagon, which were only missed when they were needed. Her sole aim appeared to be to aggravate those in charge. Given her gender, the officers gritted their teeth and endeavored to be as considerate and patient as possible. Upon reaching Muskogee, they established a camp at an old fairground. One evening when Belle was left alone in her tent to have her dinner, a gust of wind lifted one of the tent flaps, revealing the guard seated just outside her quarters, with his back to her. Belle spotted his pistol in its holster, and in a quick and daring move, she stole his weapon. The guard reacted swiftly, fleeing as Belle gave chase, shooting at him. The gunshots alerted the other officers who wrestled her to the ground. After this, the officers determined that Belle needed to be chained for the remainder of the journey. Belle and Sam Starr were brought to trial in Fort Smith, Arkansas in the court of Judge Issac Parker, more famously known as the Hanging Judge. Surprisingly, Parker displayed relative leniency toward the Starrs. Officially, it was their first offense. Belle, directly facing Parker, was sentenced, like her husband, to a year in Detroit, at the Michigan House of Correction. It remains unclear why Parker opted to send them all the way to Michigan for their sentences. The House of Correction seemed more like a rehabilitation facility than a penitentiary for hardened criminals. Perhaps Parker believed that this placement would provide the couple with a better opportunity for reform. Before departing, Belle entrusted her affairs to her daughter, Pearl. She wrote to her daughter about her eagerness to continue her education during her prison term and expressed excitement that Sam would also be compelled to attend classes. Accounts suggest that Belle excelled during her time in prison. The warden was impressed by her reading and writing abilities, assigning her light duties and permitting her to write letters on behalf of other inmates. Belle and Sam both exhibited good behavior, earning their release in just 9 months. Upon returning home, she maintained a well-stocked library, cultivated productive gardens filled with flowers and vegetables, provided aid to sick neighbors and took in an orphan girl. She reunited with her son, Eddie, who had been residing with her in-laws, and the family was together once more after an extended separation. It appeared as though she had heeded the lessons of her past actions. Yet, just before Christmas of 1884, the tranquility of Belle's life was shattered. John Middleton, the cousin of Belle's deceased husband Jim Reed, was a wanted man with an $800 bounty on his head due to a murder charge. One evening, armed with a shotgun, Middleton arrived at Belle's door. She had only known him from family gatherings in Arkansas during her marriage to Jim. Middleton was 29 years old and had a reputation as a daring outlaw who had a distinctive style, including half boots, striped twill pants, a vest, and a dress shirt beneath a short winter coat. He was missing part of one ear from a childhood haircut mishap. Middleton had escaped from a Texas prison while awaiting trial for horse theft. On November 16, 1884, he shot a newly elected sheriff in Lamar County, Texas. John Duncan was a special detective with the Texas Rangers known for pursuing outlaws like John Wesley Hardin. Duncan tracked Middleton into Indian Territory. As always, Sam welcomed the wanted outlaw into their home and assisted in hiding him in various locations in the area. Over the next 4 months, Duncan, along with the help of John West, who had previously testified against the Starrs and was now working as a policeman for the Cherokee, attempted to locate Middleton. In the spring of 1885, they believed they had cornered Middleton at Belle and Sam's cabin. However, when they raided the cabin, they found only Belle, wearing a gun belt over her dress, and she vocally expressed her displeasure with John West's actions. Middleton was not at the cabin but was nearby. Sam Starr decided that too much attention from the law had been drawn to their house, so he and Belle planned to escort Middleton to his home in Logan County and lend him one of Belle's daughter Pearl's horses to continue his journey. They packed a wagon and hid Middleton inside and traveled along the high ground of the Canadian River. However, on the evening of May 2, 1885, something Middleton did or said upset Pearl, and she refused to lend him her horse. The next morning, a rancher approached Belle and offered to bring a replacement horse for Middleton. Belle claimed that she forced Middleton to pay the rancher, and she gave Pearl's saddle to Middleton and sent him on his way. A few days later, someone stumbled upon the horse tangled in some brush near the river. The horse was still saddled and bridled, and a gun belt hung from the saddle horn, containing cartridges and a .45 caliber Colt revolver. Mud and silt on the horse indicated that it had crossed the river, but Middleton was nowhere to be found. Several days later, a bloated corpse washed up on the muddy riverbank. Though nearly unrecognizable, it was identified as John Middleton by Jack Duncan and John West due to the unique clothing he was wearing. It later became apparent that no one had paid the rancher for the horse, as Belle had simply taken it. The rancher provided descriptions of Belle, her children, Sam Starr, and Middleton, helping lawmen identify Middleton's involvement with Belle. Middleton's cause of death was determined to be drowning in the river. However, the saddle, Colt revolver, and other items found on the horse were recognized as Belle's possessions, providing evidence of her assistance to the fugitive. The lawman arrived at Belle's camp several days later and demanded that she open her trunk for inspection, hoping to find additional evidence linking her to Middleton. In response, Belle grabbed a pistol in each hand and calmly warned the lawman that if they dared to break open her trunk, their souls would speed to hell. They decided against opening the trunk, and Belle believed she had outsmarted them. However, her troubles were far from over. During this time, Belle's reputation continued to suffer. Some of the lawmen, including Duncan, claimed to newspapers that Belle was having an affair with Middleton and was no longer devoted to her husband, Sam Starr. This might have been an attempt to create tension between Belle and Sam. In June 1885, Sam was already at home when Belle and her children returned to Younger's Bend, but he left shortly afterward. On June 15, he officially became a fugitive from the law when he, along with 2 others, robbed a U.S. mail delivery team in the Cherokee Nation. Witnesses identified Sam as one of the perpetrators. 4 months later, another crime occurred when 3 men burglarized a store and post office in Blaine, located about 50 miles from the Starr home. Once again, witnesses pointed to Sam as one of the robbers. He remained on the run, hiding at the homes of various relatives in the wilderness of Younger's Bend. In mid-January 1886, Belle learned that there was a warrant for her arrest related to the stolen rancher's horse from the previous spring. She may have heard about the warrant from the famous Deputy U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves, who had interacted with her and Sam. Reeves would often tell fugitives about their warrants, giving them a chance to peacefully surrender before he arrested them. She surrendered to the U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves and on January 21, was indicted for larceny, and pleaded not guilty. She posted bond and was released. However, the charges against Belle did not lead Sam to come out of hiding. Instead, Sam emerged from hiding in February to participate in a series of robberies in the Choctaw Nation. He and 2 accomplices posed as U.S. Marshals, entered homes, and stole various items, including cash, eyeglasses, pistols, and horses. Witnesses were shocked and struggled to describe the robbers. One victim did notice that one of the robbers, who carried a 6-shooter in each hand, wore pants, an overcoat, and a white hat. This detail would later be attributed to Belle. The Starrs returned home with their stolen goods, likely assuming that the victims lived too far away to identify them accurately. Unfortunately for them, one victim had noticed Belle purchasing cartridges in a nearby town, leading the authorities to suspect her involvement in the crimes. John West and his associates arrested Belle without incident. Sam Starr remained at large, but over the next 6 months, Belle was found not guilty of the robberies in the Choctaw Nation and the Middleton horse incident. In late September 1886, Belle received word that Sam had been seriously wounded by Indian police. Deputies had encountered him while he was riding through a cornfield. Frank West, John West's brother, shot Sam's horse, and Sam fell, sustaining a head wound. Although his injury looked severe, Sam eventually regained consciousness and overpowered the 2 officers left to guard him. He disarmed them and saddled one of their horses, vowing revenge against Frank West for killing Belle's mare. Sam spent a couple of months recovering from his injuries with Belle's help, and once he was well enough, he followed through on his threat. In December 1886, Tom Starr, Sam's dad, was arrested and sentenced to prison for selling whiskey in Indian Territory. Sam was furious about his father's imprisonment and blamed the West brothers for their family's troubles. Sam and Belle decided to go to a Christmas dance. But so did Frank West. Words were exchanged. Sam drew his revolver and shot Frank West. Frank was hit but managed to return fire, and both men ended up killing each other. That was Sam Starr's last public appearance. With Sam's death, Belle was no longer considered a Cherokee subject. Authorities began proceedings to have her removed from her property. However, Belle found a solution by marrying a part Cherokee and part Choctaw man named Bill July, who was significantly younger than Belle, and had been somewhat adopted by Tom Starr. Belle's marriage to Bill July was met with disapproval from her children, Eddie and Pearl, who were not much younger than their new stepfather. Belle's relationship with her children during these final years of her life was tumultuous, marked by her meddling in their lives in an attempt to guide them onto a better path. Unfortunately, her efforts seemed to backfire, as Eddie became a convict, and Pearl ended up working in a brothel. In the wake of Sam's death, Belle had allowed various white settlers to sharecrop her property to maintain some income. During this time, she became acquainted with a man named Edgar Watson, who eagerly rented a piece of fertile land near the river. Belle formed a friendship with Watson's wife, who eventually confided in her that Edgar was wanted for murder in Florida. This presented a significant dilemma for Belle, as both Cherokee and U.S. lawmen had made it clear that harboring fugitives or lawbreakers would lead to her imprisonment. Instead of directly confronting Watson, Belle sent him a letter, informing him that she had made arrangements with someone else to rent the land. Watson simply went to the other man and accused Belle of harboring fugitives, jeopardizing her land status with the government. The other man, fearing legal consequences, withdrew on their rental agreement. Enraged by this turn of events, Belle confronted Watson, exchanged harsh words, and threatened to inform the authorities of his secret. Watson, not wanting further trouble, quietly left and rented land elsewhere. In February 1889, Belle embarked on a fateful journey with her husband, Bill July. Bill was headed to Fort Smith, Arkansas to address charges associated with his family's history of horse stealing. Belle decided to accompany him on the trip to settle a bill at a small store about 10 miles from Younger's Bend. After having lunch, Bill continued his journey to Fort Smith, leaving Belle behind at the store. While at the store, Belle told them she had a feeling that someone wanted to kill her. The store's proprietor and his wife tried to reassure her, but her premonition lingered. Despite their efforts to cheer her up, she eventually left the store, appearing gloomy. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Belle arrived at a friend's house, hoping to visit her son, Eddie, who had been living there. She missed Eddie by half an hour. While sitting on her friend's porch and enjoying some cornbread, Belle prepared to leave. As she approached her horse and climbed into the saddle, a shotgun blast erupted from behind her. The blast struck Belle in the back and neck, knocking her off her horse. Injured and trying to rise from the mud, Belle's assailant leapt over a rail fence and fired the second barrel of the shotgun. The second blast hit Belle in the shoulder and the left side of her face, resulting in a gruesome and fatal end to her life. Following her death, the people of Younger's Bend gave Belle a beautiful funeral. Despite her mixed character, which included both cruelty and kindness, friends and family remembered her for her loyalty to those close to her, regardless of their alignment with the law. After Belle's grave was filled, her husband, Bill July, confronted Edgar Watson, who had attended the funeral with his wife. Bill accused Watson of murdering his wife and threatened him with his Winchester rifle. Friends and family prevented the funeral from turning into a violent scene, but Bill and others made a citizen's arrest and took Watson to Fort Smith, seeking legal resolution. Edgar Watson hired a prominent Fort Smith attorney and managed to explain away much of the circumstantial evidence against him. Despite footprints matching his unusual shoe size and hearsay evidence suggesting that his shotgun had recently been fired, there wasn't enough to proceed with a trial. Watson wisely chose to leave Indian Territory to avoid retribution from Bill July. No further efforts were made to apprehend Belle Starr's killer, and numerous theories have arisen. Some suggest that her killer was a younger brother of Jim Reed, who sought revenge for Belle's involvement in Jim's capture and death. Others believe a rancher named Early may have done it as revenge for Belle's theft of his cattle and horses. Various theories exist, some more credible than others, but Belle Starr's checkered past and subsequent legend have made her a captivating figure in outlaw folklore. Like many Western legends, Belle Starr's story became a blend of fact and fiction, perpetuated by dime novelists who fabricated her portrayal as the Bandit Queen and the female Jesse James for their own gain. Belle Starr's murder remains unsolved to this day.
In December 1886, Tom Starr, Sam's dad, finally got caught for selling whiskey in the Indian Territory. Sam was pretty PO'd with the West brothers. You know, earlier we mentioned how one of the West guys was kind of one of the victims in the horse thieving incident and led to them getting caught. Well, now his brother, Frank, is a lawman. And, you know, he blamed the West brothers for a lot of stuff. He'd been in hiding. On Christmas of that year, him and Bill decided to get out finally and go to a dance. Well, so did Frank. He decided to go to that same dance, Frank West. And so you can probably figure out what's going to happen. They start mouthing each other. Sam drew his revolver, shoots Frank. But Frank manages to fire one off too, and they end up killing each other at this Christmas dance. And that was Sam Starr's final public appearance.
Apparently, yeah. It's a wow. It's a mutual slaying. What more could you ask for? It's
But it kind of brought some issues along with Belle. She's not married to Sam anymore. She's no longer considered a Cherokee subject, and so she was missing out on a lot of benefits and a lot of hiding places
land too, right?
Lose her land, yeah. All that. So she comes up with a plan. She marries a gentleman by the name of Bill July, who was part Cherokee, part Choctaw, and was kind of taken in by the Starr family. Kind of a, I don't know, some sort of a, almost like a brother to Sam.
They treated him like a star.
Yeah, they did. Nobody liked this. Her kids hated it. He was a lot younger than she was. He was almost the same age as her kids. You know, she hoped to finally patch things up with them. Didn't work. Her son Eddie ends up becoming a convict, and Pearl ended up working in a brothel.
What did she do in the brothel?
I think she waited tables.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. So, how long did she stay married to this dude?
Up to the end. This is her last husband. Maybe not by choice, but you know, she allowed.
This is the thing I find interesting. So she stayed married to this guy up until the end, but she kept the Starr name.
Yeah, she kept.
That was kind of her. That was.
Well, she made a
claim to fame.
She made a name for herself. They called her the Bandit Queen, the female Jesse James. So it just pretty much stuck with her. She allowed
How
some
much
folks.
of that stuff do you think was, like the dime novel stuff? How much do you think of that was going on while she was still alive?
A lot.
And how much of it happened after she was? So she was kind of getting a reputation while she was still alive.
Yeah, yeah. She may not have been quite as bad as what she's been portrayed. Sometimes the legend outgrew itself, but who knows with her? She's.
Well, I think most of the time it was like that. I mean, I know that there was there's some spectacular stories out there all across the board, but I also think that legend has a way of taking over, and these people become larger than life. All the way from Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett to Jesse James and Belle Starr.
Yeah.
All these, even up into current times. Bonnie and Clyde. John Dillinger. I mean, there was bad things happen, but there was, you get these Robin Hood legend things going on.
Yeah.
And they become folk heroes sometimes, and it's interesting how that cult of personality takes over sometimes, and they become something really they were never were.
After Sam's death and she remarried Bill July, she actually stayed out of trouble. She became a sharecropper and let some folks sharecrop on her property to make a little money. And she ended up with a man by the name of Edgar Watson, not with a man, but met a man who rented some land by them on the river. And she formed a friendship with his wife, who eventually privately told Belle that Edgar was wanted for murder out of Florida. Here we are again. She's this time she didn't know it, but she was taking in killers again.
What does Belle do this time?
Well, she could have turned him in. She tried to go around about it and told the guy, hey, I've already got this rented to somebody else. I've got it rented to so-and-so down the road, so I'm sorry it's not going to work out. Well, Edgar goes to that person and pretty much scares him off, which that spoiled Belle's plan. So she's stuck with this guy who's wanted for murder.
He was trying to take the easy way out.
Yeah.
She's going to kind of let him down easy.
Yeah. So her current husband, Bill July, has to go to Fort Smith to address some charges stemming from his Starr family's horse stealing. And Belle rides with him. Belle rides along with him in the wagon, and she had to pay a debt at a store, so he drops her off. He goes and does her business. She pays her debt, and she's talking to the storekeeper and his wife, and they said she's acting weird, and allegedly made the comment, I feel like somebody's going to kill me. And they tried to calm her down, and she ended up leaving. On her way home, she stopped at a friend's house to see her son, who'd been staying there. He had just left about 30 minutes prior, and she got through eating a little cornbread with this lady, and time to go. And she jumps on her horse to go back home, and somebody jumped out, shot her in the back with a shotgun. And as Belle's lying in the mud, whoever this person is came up on her and pretty much shot her in the face and in the chest. And
I wonder who it could have been.
That was the end of Belle Starr. Now, they had a funeral for her, and this Edgar fella shows up at her funeral, and Bill July, her current husband, goes to kill him at the funeral. They stop him, end up making a citizen's arrest on this Edgar guy. They haul him to Fort Smith. He hires a lawyer, and he gets off scot-free. But there's been a lot of theories about who killed the Bandit Queen, Belle Starr. Some say it was her first husband, Reed. Some of his family members, they were mad because she ended up getting him killed. Some say it was another fellow, last name Early, who Belle was in on stealing his cattle and horses. But to me, it's pretty much evident who it probably was.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I mean, if I was a betting man, I would say that the guy who knows that she knows that he's got a warrant out, and he's trying to kind of hide out in her place, and he's afraid that she's going to go tell somebody. So
yeah, I agree 100%.
That's my theory.
I know she had a lot of enemies out there, and she had the famous name, and
How old was she when she died?
So she ends up dead at the age of 40.
That's pretty young.
Pretty young.
for that much stuff to have happened.
She lived a pretty wild life to have it end at 40 years old.
Yeah. She
But,
was.
But
Makes me feel like a cowboy.
just
It's
a crazy story. Look at all the names involved in this: Belle Starr, Sam Henry Starr, Jesse James, Frank James, Quantrell, the younger, Cole Younger, Bass Reeves, the hanging judge Issac Parker.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, we could probably do an episode on everybody mentioned in this story if we wanted to.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, and then you get into the Cherokee Nation police and a lot of those guys that were involved in a lot of stuff. There's stories that go on for days. Pearl kind of lived her days out in Fort Smith, the way it sounds, and did she write some things about Belle Starr? Didn't she?
I believe so. But there's a lot of Ozarks connections with her. We know we named off a list of legends right there. But like you said earlier, a lot of these Western legends, fact becomes mixed with fiction, and some of these dime novelists fabricate things, and for their own gain because they want to sell those magazines and whatnot. But she was actually involved in a lot of stuff. Obviously, she was arrested and sent to prison.
Yeah, how bad of a person was she really?
Yeah,
I don't know. She could have been exactly what they said she was, and she could have been just a petty thief too, that just happened to have her name thrown out there in the right place at the right time. Yeah. And some dime novelist grabbed a hold of it and said, "Hey, this will make a great story, and I can sell dozens of copies."
Yeah. So this is one of those Arkansas roots and branches type stories where we branched out, and even though she wasn't here where you and I physically are, she was still in the Ozarks quite a bit. Born here.
Yeah, and she was in Arkansas too, but she was obviously in the Fort Smith area. So yeah, that's interesting stuff. It's
and that is
like I said, the Wild West was right here.
Yeah.
Shootouts and bank robberies and horse thieving and all that stuff right there in one story that we just told. So.
And that is the story of Belle Starr. Not sure who we will talk about next. We've got tons of options. We'll leave it a surprise. But before we go, do you have a Ozarkism?
Druther.
Druther?
Yeah. I don't know how you spell that, but
tell the audience what druther means.
I think it means rather. I'd rather be here than at work. Not that I don't like my job, because I do like my job, but if I had my druthers, I'd rather be here.
Well, we'd rather y'all keep tuning in to us and giving us some good input, sharing us and all that stuff. We're on YouTube and Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all those places. So we thank y'all for keep on listening to us and checking us out.
Yeah, and we'll keep digging and trying to find which we've been hitting some mainstream stories, but there's a lot of obscure stuff out there that well, like the Henry Starr. There's not a lot of people know about that, and that's a kind of a neat connection to our area right here in the north central Ozarks. Yeah, and that's an interesting little story, and which is it's not Wild West, but it's kind of the beginning of the whole gangster era, and that was this area through here was a big hideout, and it just kind of an out of the way place that a lot of that stuff happened, and all those guys kind of hung out. So yeah, we've got tons of stories out there. Everything from bad guys to music to politics. There's even
athletes,
Bigfoot, and all kinds of
Bigfoot. Paints.
Kind of the boggy.
We're getting close to Halloween, so
Halloween's coming up. So yeah, I think that now that you said that, that would be a good thing for us to kind of look into the spookier side of 1836 and maybe hit something fun and spooky for right around Halloween time.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in.
See you next time.
Catch you next time.
Thank you to everyone who has tuned in to this episode of the 1836 podcast. We hope you found it informative and engaging. Please like, share, rate, and review. Leaving a good rating and review on your preferred podcast platform would also help us reach a wider audience. Be sure to tune in next time for another episode, as we continue to explore and uncover the roots and branches of Arkansas, and the fascinating history of the Ozarks.